Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the post-game live show, West Virginia, brought to you by the Voice of College Football. I'm Greg Crist, along with Frank Fear and Mike Dunlap. And guys, here we are again, another Saturday night, another disappointment. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, the disappointment runs deeper this week than it has in the past few weeks. Uh, poor showing. Very, very disappointing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no
I
question.
couldn't
Yeah,
agree
go
more.
ahead, Mike.
Go ahead,
I
Mike.
couldn't agree more, Greg. And the thing again, thanks for having me on, guys. Um, the thing that I saw tonight was a team that in West Virginia that faced a team in Kansas State. That Kansas State had higher, loftier goals. They had their sights on something bigger, and quite frankly, they had better athletes. Uh, no, without question, across the board. And West Virginia you've heard me say this before, the strain. You watch the difference between those Kansas State players and our guys. And it hurts me to say that. But there's just not that extra incentive that guys like, we've talked to before in here. Daryl Talley, those guys, the effort they gave, they refused to lose. And we do not have that.
Yep. Frank, your thoughts?
Well, I think I'm somewhere in the middle. Let me say a few words about context, and maybe some of the viewers know this, maybe others don't. And I'm going to start with the coach, Kleeman. Kleeman was the head coach at North Dakota State. The team that was on the field tonight was North Dakota State. That's the way North Dakota State played. He won 4 national championships at North Dakota State before he went to Kansas State. I have his record here, and it's quite stunning. He was 69-6, 69-6 at North Dakota State. And the level of toughness that North Dakota State, a lot of people don't realize how good the North Dakotas and the South Dakotas are. North Dakota State was reeling off national championships at the football championship subdivision. Now South Dakota State is doing it. They get great athletes. I don't know how many people watching this have ever been to Manhattan, Kansas. I've been to Manhattan, Kansas. I lived in Iowa for 7 years. Iowa is where Ames is not in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you've got Des Moines that's about 35 miles to the south. Iowa City is to the southeast. Omaha's to the southwest. Minneapolis is to the north. Manhattan, Kansas is 2 hours from Kansas City to the east, and it's Japan to the west. I mean, there's literally nothing for hundreds of miles except really nice little towns, prairie towns in western Kansas, and you get into the eastern part of Colorado. What he's done there is to recruit, and Kansas State is a very difficult place to recruit. But he's been able to do it, which is great. And his teams play with an edge. Uh, the referees lost control of that game early. There should have been penalties called for hits on the quarterback, and there weren't. And that's just an invitation for North Dakota State, Kansas State football, which is in your face all the time. Having said that, and I'll stop this right here. Do you know what the time of possession was at halftime?
I'm sure it was way us.
It was time of possession at halftime was 20 minutes and 25 seconds or so for West Virginia, and 9 minutes and 13 seconds for them. We were not beaten tonight by the big three because Johnson beat us, but at that point, the leading rusher in the Big 12 had 9 yards. Or 8 yards, no, 9 yards. The team had 8. And the wide receiver, one of the leading wide receivers, had very few. He only had 2 catches all night. It was the undercard that beat us. But that shows you he has depth. They play hard. West Virginia was in the game. And then the second half, the thing that bothers me, and I will stop with this, is how can West Virginia play the way they did last quarter against KU, all the game against Oklahoma State, second quarter against Kansas State, and then look like the way they did in the second half tonight and in the second quarter against Iowa State last week. We just flipped the switch.
Yeah, we talked about it last week and how we do that scripted set where we always go right down the field and score. And why don't we do that all the time? And I've been searching for the right word, but I think disjointed might be a good word for our offense. We're just we just can't create our identity, and we can't do things consistently. But and I talked about this tonight. My brother-in-law watched the game with me. We talked about it. When we have a 3rd and 6, for example, we'll try to run a pass play, and it'll be 30 yards down the field, and it's an overthrow or interception or whatever. When the opponents have a 3rd and 6, they send the receiver 7 yards down the field. He turns around. They throw it to him. He catches it. First down. They keep the chains moving. It's almost like we just don't have that, that flow about us to be able to consistently keep a drive alive. We'll do it well for several plays. Sometimes drive it all the way down the field. But then the next series, it's run first down, pass second, pass third, we're out and punting the ball. And I don't know. It just seems like our offense is just so out of sorts, again, disjointed. That there's not any consistency. There's not any, you don't feel the same way you did the first time we had the ball and not tonight, but last week when we had the defense on their heels and they don't know what we're going to do. We never had that. And now, and like tonight, it just seemed like we never, ever got to that point. Even when we went down and scored, it never seemed like we got to the point to where we run offense, we run our plays, and the defense is kind of on their heels, and we drop off a short pass here and gain 5. We run the ball and gain 4. We run it again, get our first down, run a quarterback draw. We just don't seem to have any rhythm, no consistency in what we're doing. It just seems like, they're pulling plays out of the air. And, I don't know. I know as the game goes on, your plans kind of, it's like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan. They get punched in the face, then their plan changes. I think our plan kind of changes, but we don't have any consistency with that change. And it's just, let's try this. Let's throw the bomb one time, see what happens. There's just no consistency and no continuity whatsoever on our offense. And then tonight, you look at our defense, and I tell you, our defensive line did a pretty good job again. We shut down the run, obviously. I think you mentioned Giddings. He had 32 yards, I think, at the end of the fourth, close to the end of the game. And he had one of those runs was a 25-yard run. So we held their run game in check. I mean, the defensive line did a pretty good job there. But our pass defense, again, our secondary has so much trouble covering people. Again, like Mike said last week, I think talent might have something to do with it. Schematics, mistakes, mental mistakes, that sort of thing. But the opponent always has someone open. If it's 3rd and 7, they have somebody open for an 8-yard pass. If it's 3rd and 10, they have somebody open for an 11-yard pass. I mean, it's just it never stops with that. And our defensive line did a good job taking care of the run, but our pressure was non-existent. We didn't get any pressure on the quarterback, which leaves our defensive backs out hanging out to dry, but they still can't cover anybody, and it's disappointing. And so I don't know. I'm really at a loss for words right now. I'm sure their coaching staff is looking for some answers, trying to figure out what to do. Yeah. And I hate to say it, but as Mike said, and I think I said this last weekend, there's no enthusiasm, there's no drive out there, there's no tenacity. We have, I think Trotter on defense who's tenacious and gets after it and gets fired up. But everybody else is just ho hum. and somebody makes a big play. Okay, we know they're going to complete a pass next down, so it doesn't matter. It's just like we have no fire, no no desire to succeed. And I mean, I know that's hopefully not the truth, but they do want to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just not any. There's no emotion. There's nothing, and it's hard to watch. I ain't gonna lie, it's hard to watch. And tonight I want to switch over to Texas and Texas and Georgia so bad, but I had to keep watching because I knew we were going to talk about it. So, tough night.
Well,
Greg, if I could touch on one thing about this scripted play. Some people may not realize why they script the plays, but the reason is so they do away with their tendencies, so that whatever the other team has scouted, they don't know the tendencies on what will be 3rd and 2 on the 4th play of the series.
Right.
And that's why they do that.
Right.
You remember the great coach John Shamar from Bluefield High School.
Oh yeah.
I played in the North-South for him, and we actually ran the no-huddle offense in 1985 in the North-South game. And we had 4 series of 4 plays that he could call anytime. And I've always been a big fan of that. But some people might not know what scripting is or why they do it. And I just wanted to touch on that.
Right. Yeah, and I think like if you look at our play, our scripted play, like last week, I mean, we went right down the field. They didn't have an answer. And I know, you have to, you obviously can't do that every time. Well, I guess you could if you wanted to, but I don't know how successful that would be. But so it seems like after we get off our scripted plays, it seems like that we just lose our continuity, we lose our flow. We don't have it becomes disjointed. We just it's like they're pulling plays out of the air. Where'd that play come from? And it's just frustrating to watch. And again, the frustrating thing is, and I told my brother-in-law this tonight. I said, when Kansas will do this, Kansas State will do this. I said, when you have a 4th and 6, and it reminds me of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, so I never liked the Steelers. And I would get so aggravated watching when Roethlisberger was the quarterback. Yeah, they'd have a 3rd and 5. I'm a big fan. They'd have a 3rd and 5. They'd send their tight end. He'd run straight down the field 5 yards and just turn around, and Roethlisberger would just pitch it out there to him, and they had a first down. Kept the drive going. It used to make me so mad. I'm like, it's so simple. That is so simple, and nobody ever stops it. And that's what this reminds me of. Is like tonight. Kansas State had a 3rd and 6. They run a guy down there 6-7 yards, throw the pass, open for a first down, and they kept their drives going. And then we come up with a 3rd and 6. We drop back in the pocket. We stand, and we launch one 30 yards downfield or 40 yards downfield. And I don't know. It just seems like creativity's lacking, continuity's lacking. A lot of things offensively are just out of whack. It's just difficult to watch.
Yeah.
You almost wonder about the progression, Greg. What the quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, 4 guys are. In retrospect, when Kevin White was on, if you remember him, they beat Penn State, and his big thing was the check down.
Yep.
Just like you said, 3rd and 4, they threw a 5-yard pass to the tailback.
Yep.
So it makes you wonder what the progression is. It also makes you wonder about when they strip the plays, are they coming out and saying, look, on the 3rd play, whatever it is, you are going to throw it to the X, you are going to throw it to the Y, etc. And then as they get away from that, if there's more freedom for the quarterback, that causes more confusion on the play, so to speak. And also, I wonder about too many cooks in the kitchen. You got a game analyst, game pass game. Hey, somebody needs to call the plays.
Yeah. I think you guys are getting at it, and I understand Leo and others raising questions about the defense,
Absolutely.
and that's legitimate. But okay, you're the coach of Kansas State. You're going into halftime, and they give you the clipboard, and what you see is your team had 150 yards total in the first half, 152 yards total, 8 yards rushing, but you're ahead 17-10 because you got 10 points on turnovers, both because of our quarterback. Both
Yep.
because of the quarterback. Quarterback throws an interception, we go down and get a field goal. Quarterback throws an interception, they get a pick six. And so, when you think about, everybody talks about three parts of the game: offense, defense, special teams. Our defense is more exposed than it should be because the offense is not getting it done. The wide receivers are not coming through. We had a lot of coin on Bray to come through, and Bray hasn't played in 3 games now. Garrett Green only started running at toward the end of the first half, and he started coming back. Before that, it was passing. So my feeling is that if people are going to say what's the one thing it needs to, if we need to make a coaching change, I have no idea what we're trying to accomplish on offense, and it's killing the team because we're dominating and then we lose it all. And so
it's just like tonight. Like you said, you look at those stats in the first half. If you just looked at the stat sheet, you'd think West Virginia was up by 2 touchdowns. And the offense just puts us in to keep the defense stays on the field, and everything obviously feeds off of other things. The defense needs to get off the field. The offense needs to sustain drives, give the defense a rest, all those type of things. It all plays into to each other. And you look at the stats tonight in that first half, we probably should have been ahead if you looked at it that way. But again, the offense so disjointed, and our receivers. Just to be honest, our receivers can't get open. You watch those replays where can see receivers; they're covered. There's nobody open ever, and it's hard for the quarterback. But then again, you look, and I don't remember. It was the third or the fourth quarter. Nico dropped back to throw. He had some pressure. He stepped up in the pocket nicely, and he took off running, and he gained 4 yards, and it was fourth and whatever. But he had a receiver wide open running right across the middle of the field. Where the defensive back had gotten picked off, and he didn't see him. So there's so many things that you look at a play and you're like, if they would do this, they would do that. And here it is. Garrett runs with open receiver. He's making 4 reads. That's right. You'll see him tuck it and go, and there will be somebody actually breaks open. Receivers very rare when they open.
Again, I'll just rely on stats again. We said on the show on Wednesday, this is a different team from Iowa State that they each has a lead quarterback, obviously, but Iowa State had multiple runners, multiple receivers. The numbers show it. Brown's their leading receiver. He had 2 catches tonight. He didn't hurt us. Giddens was leading the conference. Was in the Heisman conversation. With 7.1 average per carry. He had 9 yards at halftime. It was 24 points on turnovers. And not in 2 games. 24 points on turnovers caused by the quarterback in a game and a half. The Iowa State game and half of this game. So it's there's no rhythm. We just refuse to accept our identity as a running team.
And I thought tonight we were going to do that because we came out, and even though we weren't successful in every run, we kept running. And I thought, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to keep running until we establish this running game. And then we went away from it. It didn't work a few times. So, we do the normal thing of running on first down and then passing the next 2. And, I thought we were going to come out and try to establish that run game. And we did the first couple possessions. And then after that, we kind of abandoned it until, it wasn't obvious. And then that's when we gain yards when we run, and it's not obvious. But we just don't have that identity on offense. It's again.
And I'll say to Dreamer, we suck so bad. I again would modify that. Third quarter, we had 16 yards on offense. K-State had 200. The fact of the matter is, if we do not get our offense in order, it really doesn't make any difference on the defense. And when we had Clint Trickett on the show the other night from Jackson State, he said, we run a wide open offense, but it's run first. And his
Yep.
point was, if you can run, you can do anything.
Yeah.
If you can
Yep.
run first and dominate, and that's what Jackson State is doing with Rich Rod. And
Mm-hmm.
we just, I don't know. It's mystifying in a way, because how do you get 16 yards? How do you get 16 yards in the third quarter when you had an offensive time of play domination in the first half?
Yeah.
It's just absolutely mystifying.
Yeah.
But that
It
goes
is.
back to what we're saying, Frank, that Jackson State and Rick Trickett have an identity. They
That's
have
what we're
that
saying.
identity.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. Yeah, we've said that for multiple weeks, and we're denying our identity.
Yeah.
We don't, it's like we don't like that. I don't like my face. I think I'll do something else with my hair, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's I said on the Wednesday show, if we lost this game, there would be consequences, and I still believe that the case. Maybe the saving grace is that Arizona, which was supposed to be great guns, is 3-4 too, and we play there next week. So
Yeah, it's tough. And like I said, there's no identity, and I mean, I think that's not a bad idea, Leo.
Yep,
Leo
absolutely.
said change the offense to a run option.
Yeah,
Probably not a
exactly.
bad idea. You've got to try something, and I just don't. Our running game has not been horrible. I just think everything is so disjointed. It's like we run when we're supposed to run, and the defense knows we're going to run when we're supposed to run. And when we pass, and this is what frustrates me, we just don't have, we did run one slant tonight on a fourth down that would have easily picked up a first down if the pass would have been better. But we don't run the slants. We don't run our receivers out there for the short throws to get first downs and that sort of thing. It's like if we can't throw a bomb, we can't throw it. And it's so tiring to watch because, like I said, there's no consistency. It's just like they're pulling plays out of the air. I think with our lack of ability to throw the ball well, we've got to establish the run. I mean, we've got to start running the ball. And and if you're successful running it, at some point, your pass game is going to be affected by that. You're going to be able to get some people open because everybody's going to be keen on stopping the run. And but you can't just rear back and throw it 40 yards down the field. You gotta I think get that intermediate pass game going. Your 8-10 yard passes and live with those. Those are, I always said a 5 yard pass is just as good as a 5 yard run. May not be flashy, may not look great, still get you 5 yards. And we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about some of the classic teams, Greg, that pound the ball, play action pass, pound the ball, play action pass. Then they throw one deep. And again, it all goes back to identity. But I would like to see him come out next week and wear Paulson out 30, 35 carries.
Yeah.
And, prove us wrong, if nothing else. But that's what I would do. And like Rick Trickett said, when you can run the ball, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, you're right. And the more you run and the better you run, then that passing game will open up. And I'm not opposed to taking that shot downfield every now and then, but that seems like that's the only really play we have on when we're passing the ball is just to run somebody straight down, try to lob it to them, and hopefully they can come up with it. Mm-hmm. Very seldom are they open on those, and we have just we've got to start running it. I don't know. You may not be successful, half the time, but you still got to do it. You still got to run the ball because we're not we are not a passing team, and we're not going to be successful throwing the ball, 30, 35 times a game. We're just not. And, we don't have the receivers. We don't have the quarterback, but we do have running backs. But give it to them. Let's see what happens. Like you said, Mike, prove us wrong. Let them run the ball and see what happens.
Well, it slows down the pass rush and everything, Greg.
Yeah.
Those DBs start sneaking up. The linebackers start sneaking up.
Yep.
And then you pick and choose your spot. So
that's a good comment there about them giving up. I felt kind of like, I kind of felt that too. There's just no emotion. There's no excitement. There, like Mike said, it's just not there. And of course, as a defensive player, when your offense is struggling like they're struggling, and you end up out there on the field nonstop. After a while, I feel like they probably do give up and say, "Yeah, what's the point?" We can do as good as we can do, but the offense is not doing nothing, so it don't matter. And I think that's a problem as well.
And the sad thing about this, guys, is that the Big 12 was there for the taking. Three of our first 4 Big 12 games were at home. Utah, Arizona, they're supposed to run away with it or at least be really competitive. They're not as good. As we already saw, TCU is ahead of Utah already. They lost their starting quarterback. Texas Tech lost today to Baylor. What's interesting about the Big 12 now is that Cincinnati, now that they're into their second season of Power 4 football, and BYU, independent for those years, that was a huge win for Cincinnati today to knock off Texas Tech. And for BYU.
But BYU last night.
Yeah, for BYU. And that was a flip of last year. Last year, at the last game of the season, BYU went into Stillwater. The game went into overtime, and it was OSU that won, with Ollie Gordon running in the ball to win the game. So Oklahoma State was supposed to be stronger. They're struggling, but lost 4 straight now. Kansas was supposed to be a force. They finally won today, big, but they played Houston. But it was there for West Virginia. It really was. And, and I say this advisedly, people know, I think many, that I'm an Iowa State alum. Iowa State is a good team. Kansas State is a good team. But you have to ask yourself the question, what's the context within which they're competing? And so, when I was at Iowa State and Kansas State were bottom feeders in the Big 8. It was owned by Nebraska and Oklahoma. Colorado once in a while would have a good team, but things have changed because the conference has changed. And that's the thing I guess I'm most disappointed about, is that coming off a 9-4 season, it was there for WVU. We might still go to a bowl, but boy, that's tough.
Yeah, and
that's right. Until Bill Snyder showed up,
Yeah.
It shows you what a coach can do. But before that, it was just awful at K-State. And all you have to do is just look at the record. Pardon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Stan Parrish was at Marshall and brought them back from 20-some losing seasons. And Stan's next stop was Kansas State.
Yep.
And at the time, it was noted as the worst football coaching job in America.
Yeah.
And Stan went out there and kind of got him going again. And I think Bill Snyder took over from Stan, if I'm not, if I'm thinking right, but I may be wrong.
I can look it up.
Yeah, you're right. That's the difference in a coach.
Yeah.
The atmosphere, the locker room, the training table, the guys that played for Don Nehlen still remember things about him that he preached, so to speak, or that were important to him, and they became important to us.
Yeah.
And that's just and you go down through history and you think about the the top-notch coaches that presented that atmosphere of themselves to their players, if that makes sense.
It does, but there's a context too. It's not just the personality; it's the context. One of the things that anybody who coaches at Michigan is going to have is Ann Arbor. It's a great city, great place, a lot of things going on. Morgantown is always identified as one of the best college towns in the country. I'm swearing, if you haven't gone to Manhattan, go there. You have to get there. It's 2 hours west of Kansas City. And how Bill Snyder and Kleeman now are recruiting the quality players they are in Manhattan, Kansas, is nothing short of amazing. And so I think it's picking the person who can fit the context that's so critical. I can tell you from Michigan State, when Michigan State hired J.L. Smith to come from Louisville to be the head coach, he didn't fit the context, and he had a tough time selling himself to Michigan high school coaches, recruiting, and so it's being able to get the right person in the context. It's not. I don't think it's good enough anymore just to get the right person. You got to get the right person at the right place at the right time. And I'll say it again. What's happened in Kansas State, in historical terms, is a miracle. It's miraculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, point well taken, Frank.
Yep.
Yeah, look at this. Here you go. Look at this.
Yeah. 230-1. Yeah.
It's
and I'm not so sure, that, and I think the problem at West Virginia. I'm not so sure that if you look at West Virginia and recruiting and those types of things, historically, we've always been competitive. We've always been, good place to play. Nobody wanted to play us at home, et cetera, et cetera. But today's a little different story. You've got NIL, you've got the transfer portal. You got a lot of other things that draw players. We used to get players, develop them, and when they were fifth-year seniors, that's when we really turned it on. If you look at, back in '88, Mike, you can attest to this. Our offensive line had fifth-year seniors on it, the whole line, and that's why we were so good. And unfortunately, it's hard to build off that with some of the things that we had happen at WVU. And I think now, I think we get good players, but they need time to develop, and I don't think we have time to develop them. And we've become one of those places where if somebody is outstanding, then they go somewhere else because of the NIL or the transfer portal, and it's hard for us to keep those good players. And I'm not saying it can't be done in Morgantown. It's been done in the past. So we just didn't maintain it. And I think we've taken a step or two backward now. I know a lot of people are calling for Neil Brown's head. And, I understand that frustration. I get that. But too, I think if you look at, a season, you look at last season, for example, we were 9-4. But if you take a player or two here and there, we could have easily been, a 10-win team, 11-win team, but we could also easily been a 6-win team. So there's such a fine line there in winning and losing. And I know, tonight, last week, we're getting rolled pretty well. But I don't think, I don't think that it's gloom and doom totally. I think we still have good football players. If we can keep them intact, keep them there, at some point, it'll work out for us. It'll be better. But Morgantown it's a tough place to recruit and get players. There's no question about that. I know a lot of people talk about it being a great college town. It is. It's great. It's awesome. But that doesn't translate into 5-star football players wanting to come there. There's other things that go into it other than your city atmosphere. And you're not going to get much better in Morgantown. It's a great place. But at the same time, there's money involved, NIL money. There's history, tradition, all that sort of thing that other schools have that we don't, that play into it. So it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world for us to recruit top-notch players and be able to compete. I mean, that's just the fact, you know.
Well, and we're never going to be the Ohio State or
Right.
Michigan. There's a mystery here though that we haven't talked about. I was stimulated by this by Timothy's. I put it up earlier, and I'll put it up again. That billionaire donors, and Greg's talking about the money. Well,
Yep.
there's a ton of money related to gambling and Vegas. If Kansas State was so much better than West Virginia, why was the line set at -3? And why did the late money come in on West Virginia? It went off. It went off game time at minus Kansas State -2.5.
Yeah.
And so
Well-
that means that the guys who are setting the line are either missing something significantly about West Virginia, or something else is going on.
Yeah, the money is what switches that line. You know, but I look at that as, and I told my brother-in-law prior to the game, we were on FanDuel doing a little betting, and we took West Virginia, and I said, you know, traditionally, home game, West Virginia, nighttime, look out, you know, and in the past, that's the way it's been, and but now, this year in particular, it's not so much that way. So I'm not sure that that the gamblers didn't do the same thing we did. You know, they look at West Virginia and say, you know, they got to have this win. They're playing at home. It's a night game. It's going to be crazy there, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure that's not where the money went because of that. But that's not us right now. You know, we're not intimidating anybody. And, you know, coming into Morgantown on a Saturday night don't mean the same thing that it used to mean.
Mm-hmm.
Might be because
And you know one thing,
I made the difference.
You
I
know-
think that's what's going.
one thing I thought was that the kids were not playing for Neil Brown's job. You know, if you get what I mean, they weren't putting forth, you know, here's my coach. I'm going to bust my ass to do everything I can to get him a win, or at least keep it from being what it was.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Let me put this up, guys, because we talked a lot about this in the pregame show. Joey and I were supposed to do the pregame show, and we didn't. And so I filled in for him. Joey sent me a text this morning and asked me if I had seen the video he cut last night. It's at the network. It's a short video. Recommend that you watch it. I apologize because I had it in the chat, the URL in the chat for the pregame show, and I got caught up with the game and forgot to put it in, and I apologize. But Joey is going to be hanging up his headphones, as Timothy said, and he's going to stay with the Voice of College Football, at least for the time being, in administrative capacity. But he's no longer going to be an on-air personality, and that's a real loss on the heels of the death of Golden Blue Dude, and also the death of our good friend Wolfley, the Wolfman. And also, and I forgot to put this tonight, I had it in the pregame, is a URL for a GoFundMe that Joey and Yvette would really appreciate your donations to help with them, because they have been faced with a lot of medical bills. So our thoughts are with Joey, and we always enjoyed working with him, and we're going to continue doing that behind the scenes. But my understanding is, and you can see it in the video, he's done his last show on the network. And
Yep. Sad
I
stuff.
agree.
Yep. Yep.
Good luck,
Sad
Joey.
stuff. Yep. We're pulling for Joey, and we know it's a tough thing for him because he he enjoyed doing these types of things, and he's very knowledgeable. He's connected and knows people, knows things, and done a great job. And I think we're all going to miss him. So, but hang in there, Joey, and keep working at it. Everything's going to work out. There's another comment we got, Frank.
Yeah.
We got up there. Doc Holliday was able to do it with the Florida Pipeline. Then continue that when he went to Marshall. TCU spent $1 million on Max Dugan, Kendra Miller, and one other player
It's
whose
true.
name eludes me. Yeah, I mean it's all about the money right now, and I know when we see the Country Roads Trust, and we know, um, I like that name, Girth Brooks.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the
It
do
is.
you guys want to see if we can match that? I don't know, but
Yeah, yeah. Let me get
uh,
my. Wait a minute. All mine's on the
Yeah,
bottom.
you
If
gonna
you
have to
flip
read it to me. I
it
got
down,
cataracts.
if you flip it upside down, mine looks good.
yeah. Hey Girth, thank God you're not at Florida State.
That's right.
Almost in the college playoff, and then 1-6 now, I guess.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah.
and the flip side is Indiana, always on the downside. They lose their coach. He goes to Penn State, and they bring in Kurt Signetti, and they just trashed Nebraska today.
And
Just
they look good too.
boy,
They
they
look
are
good.
good.
Yeah, they're good. And again, it shows it can be done. Uh, but again, we look at the Country Roads Trust. So that's what I was getting ready to say. And some of our programs that we have in place to raise that money. You know, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to guess this. If you look at, say, the money that we're bringing in for the NIL, the portal, all those types of things, and you look at the money, say, of Michigan or an Ohio State or Alabama, et cetera, is bringing in, I guarantee you it's going to be a whole lot more at those other places than what it is here. I've said this all along. That's going to make it hard for us because we just don't have the population, the people,
That's right.
the money, to keep pace with these guys. And that's why I've been pushing so hard for this NFL model in football is you know get some structure to it, get some guidelines to it, make it so it's equal for everybody. Because if it's not, then these big schools, these big money schools are going to control everything like they always have, and we don't have a fair shot at it because we don't have the money.
Yeah.
And that's a matter of fact.
Yep. Yep. And the SEC and Big Ten have made it very clear they want to run it. And I agree. I think a region going back to the future, going back to a regional model, which is essentially what you're talking about, is good for fans, and it would address some of those issues.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that. But whether it'll happen, that's
Yeah.
completely out of our hands. And so now, Ren Baker is going to have to figure out what to do. What's interesting about all of this, as I look at it, is this. On the one hand, a lot of people say, and we've heard it a million times, in West Virginia, really, it's about West Virginia University because we don't have any pro teams. There's a downside when all your eggs are in one basket because the emotions are so high because you don't. It's not like you're in New York City where you can, there are multiple of everything,
Right. Right.
or a place, a populous state where there are a variety of college teams. I mean, even in Iowa, there's Iowa and Iowa State. In Indiana, there's Purdue and there's Indiana, and there's Notre Dame. And you can go on and on and on. If you look at where programs are across the country, I'm personally, and I'm a homer for West Virginia, I'm hard pressed to say we're really in deep doo-doo compared to what other programs are experiencing. If you look at it just on the face of it, Florida State is a good example.
Yeah.
And there are others. I mean, UCLA, USC is 3-4. They
Yeah.
lost today. They
Got beat by
lost
Maryland.
to Maryland.
Yeah.
And so now I understand people, say, I don't care about USC. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at it from a sector perspective, and this is what your athletic director and your president has to do. The question is, when do you push a button and when do you say it's not quite time yet? And
Yeah.
none of us is in a position to make that call. They'll have to make that call.
Yeah.
And look at Pitt. Did they play today? I don't know if they played today or
I
not.
think they were off today. Yeah, I think they were
Yeah.
today.
They're undefeated, but how good is Pitt? And compared to last year when they had an awful season? So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, and you just you hope, or I do anyway. I know a lot of fans don't feel this way, but you hope that they don't pull that trigger too soon. And I've said this all along. I'm not a huge Neil Brown fan. I'm not a Neil Brown hater. I'm not a Neil Brown apologist, but I also am a realist. And when I look at our program, I realize that there are hills to climb. There's things we have to overcome. And I don't know that firing a coach every 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever it is the answer, because then you start all over. It's a whole new thing. A new culture has to be built, et cetera, et cetera. And, I do worry a little bit when I see the lack of enthusiasm and the lack of, as Mike put it, the lack of desire and the energy and that sort of thing. I worry about that. But at the same time, you look back, Dana Holgerson didn't do much but win here, and we ran him off basically. And I just worry about that with Neil Brown. And I think Neil Brown obviously knows football. He hadn't forgot how to coach. I just think there's some issues that have to be dealt head on with. I don't know if he will deal with them like he should. I know he's a loyal guy and a good guy. It's hard to, if you got somebody that's been coaching with you forever, it's hard to walk in and say, hey, got to replace you. Whether he can do that sort of thing or not, I don't know. But I hope we don't pull the trigger too quick here and then have another Bobby Bowden on our hands. We have to be careful. We have a history of doing that. And I think we need to be careful of that. Because you know what? I mean, what's out there that we're going to get that's going to make us better. I think, looking at it from a fan's perspective, I'd be more encouraged if we went out and recruited Sam Walton's grandson to be our director of operations and had $8 billion in his pocket. I'd feel better about that than I would going out and getting I'd feel better about that than going out and getting Nick Saban. We need that $1 billion.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to make us better.
Well, if you did replace Neil Brown, let's just think about that. Who would be your top 3 replacements for Neil Brown? One of them's got to be Jimbo Fisher, I would think.
Well, Mike, before you say anything else, I've talked about that again today with some friends. And I would say this, what really had, I know Jimbo Fisher, he did win that national championship down in Florida State. But again, different time, different era, different predecessor. What really has he done to make us think that he could come in here and change it? You look at his time at Texas A&M, had all the resources in the world, more money than they know what to do with. Still not able to get it together and do what they hoped he would do there. So I don't know, I hear everybody say that, but I'm not so sure that that's really a viable choice in my mind.
Well, the thing you got to remember too is we don't know what happened at Texas A&M. I hear stories, certainly can't repeat them, but anytime there's a change, like look at Rich Rod at West Virginia. Do we really know what happened?
Right.
So that's as Frank says, the context of it. The guy certainly knows how to coach.
Yeah.
Rich Rod knows how to coach. Would he be welcome back?
Yeah.
Would he want to come back? I mean, there's so many variables. Or do you go out on the limb and hire some young Frank Signetti? Bring Frank Signetti back, Junior.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just lots of variables.
Yeah, and again, I look at it, and I see what Kirk Signetti's done at Indiana. Yeah, that's my sister-in-law, by the way, falling through the doorway. In case you could hear that.
I'm sorry, I said Frank.
Yeah, Frank Jr. That's the same thing. You look at what he's done in Indiana, but then again, and I'm always the skeptic when I look at these guys, and I think, well, just like I always felt about the guy that went to Michigan after Rich Rod. I can't remember his name now. Big guy. Went to Michigan after Rich Rod. Frank, you're a Michigan guy. Who was that?
I'm only partly listening to what you guys are saying, and the
I knew that.
reason,
That's what
yeah, the reason is in the chat because I forgot to put in the GoFundMe for Joey.
Oh,
His
okay.
video. I want to make sure everybody has easy
Yeah,
access.
yeah,
So I
definitely.
think you're talking about the guy who was went to San Diego State after that.
Yeah,
Um,
I can't
yeah, I
remember.
can't remember his name. Yeah, actually, I think he was a
But
Schembeckler guy. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I'll
but
look it
yeah, he
up.
came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came in after Rich Rod the year after, and won like 10 games and played in the Rose Bowl or whatever. Everybody going crazy about him. Well, he had Rich Rod's players, and
Right.
after that year, it fell off and they were terrible. Yeah, after that, and he got fired a couple years later. And I'm not saying that's the case with Kirk Cimietti. I don't know enough about that situation to even know. But I think last year he was the offensive coordinator at Pitt, if I'm not mistaken. And so who knows, what the setup there was, what kind of players he had coming in. You know, you just don't know. And you look at coaches, and uh, I don't know. I just think that uh, longevity, continuity with the program, et cetera, is very important. And I don't think you get that when you fire somebody after 4 or 5 seasons. I know Neil Brown has had time, and I think that the product should be a little bit better. But I think this is a different era, and there's different problems that he's facing. With NIL, the portal, that sort of thing, and getting people to WVU. I think that's a problem. I don't know that a coaching change is going to change that.
Yeah, and
His
plus,
name is
like
Brady
you say,
Hoke.
Brady Hoke.
Brady
Yeah.
Hoke, that's who it was.
Yep.
And the thing,
Yeah.
Greg, too,
By
is
the
when
way,
when
here's
you
the, if I could do the, Mike, hold on for a second. Just so I
yes, sir.
make sure I show the links. They're up there. The GoFundMe, please. They're trying to raise $16,000. And it's explained in more detail. And by the way, Greg, the person who organized this has asked if she could come on the show Wednesday for a bit to
Oh,
provide more background and
absolutely.
yeah, so I'll tell her yes and so on.
Yep.
And here is the video. It's at our network under videos, and we encourage you. It's a short video to watch it. And just wanted to make sure, and I apologize that I didn't get this done before. So it's up there now.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Mike. I interrupted.
Oh no, sir. That took much more precedence over what I had to say. But I was just going to mention that Greg knows this as a coach. As when you bring in a new coach or a new staff, the entire terminology changes.
Yep.
And at the college football level, it's like learning a new language. Spanish, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite phrase is "Donde este baño," which is "Where is the bathroom?" And in
There
a
you
lot
go.
of cases, that's what you end up with. And even even your upperclassmen now that are uh, 3 and 4 year starters, players that know the offense by heart, now are just at ground zero, just like everybody else. And that is definitely a step backwards.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the most disappointing thing is, we had the good season last year. We heard about the good recruits we were getting in this year, the good people we're getting out of the
Oh
portal,
boy.
filling spots. We thought with our defensive secondary, and I'm not for sure, but as I've watched the games this year, I feel like I've seen 20 different names back there. I see a name tonight I don't even remember seeing ever in a game, and I can't remember what it was, but it seems like we're seeing different people, and I think the big disappointment is everybody felt like our secondary is going to be shored up, our defense is going to be pretty daggone good, our offensive line for the most part's intact. I don't think we realized what we were losing when we lost Zach Frazier. But and then the outcomes of these games then are just disappointing. And, I think when you play really, really good teams early in the season, like Penn State, it shakes your confidence a little. Our team seems to play with zero confidence. They just look like they don't have enough confidence to do anything, offensively or defensively. It's like on defense, when we get in a 3rd and 3 situation, it's like we know they're going to get first down. We still don't know how they're going to get it, but we know they're going to get it. It's like when we get a 3rd and 3, we're like, my gosh, anyway, we can get these 3 yards. What are we going to do to get 3 yards? So it just seems like they're playing with no confidence. And yeah, I think that's the biggest disappointment is the fact that, we felt like with what we had coming back, and then some of the things we were hearing about the portal and all that, that we were going to be, so much better than what we actually are.
Well, I mean, the rankings basically were all in our favor. We went
Yep.
over those. We went over those in the off season, and I was saying to myself, did I see Reed Carrico out there tonight? Well, he was there. He had 1 tackle.
I saw him. I watched him. I paid a
One
lot of attention
tackle.
to him. Yeah, paid a lot of
And,
attention to him. I watched him last week, and he was bad. Tonight, I watched him some. I know on one particular play when they scored on a play, the defensive lineman or tight end, I'm not sure which one it was, buried him in the end zone. Just completely buried him.
well,
Like wow.
and he was the Ohio State recruit, and
Right.
Sean Martin had 2 tackles.
Yeah, and I want to say too, I thought the key in the game was Sean Martin missing that tackle on the quarterback on that 4th down play. Um, we had him stopped. If Sean Martin could have just made that tackle right there, we had the ball inside the 50 going the other way. Instead, they get a first down on that play. The very next play, they throw a touchdown pass, and game's over. It was 17-10. We would have had the ball inside their, on their side of the field, but yet we couldn't bring him down.
That's right.
I thought that was a very, very, very critical play. I know, you look at the score and say, well, they blew us out. But if you look at the game where it unfolded, if we get that stop right there, we get down and score even a field goal, it's a whole different thing. Being down 17-13, tied up 17-7 is a whole lot different than being down 24-10. And, that's what happened after that. So I thought that was a big, big play. And like you said, Sean Martin's just been non-existent.
That's amazing, isn't it? Timothy brings up a good point because it does change the dynamic when you have 2 of your 3 major runners not available, and a lineman like Milam not there in the second half.
Yeah.
And that probably goes a long way to explain why we only had, 16 yards in that 3rd quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're right. I mean, telephone calls have already been made. Dana took the call. He is available, and I think it's a good deal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, guy said it couldn't be any worse. It could be a lot better. I mean, Dana did a good job while he was here, and all he done was get criticized. And he brought some of the better players we've had at WVU in a long time, and was won 8-9 games a year, and we had some pretty dynamic teams, and we ran him off. But that's that's just the way it is here. I think people invest so much into it, as Mountaineer fans like we all are. A lot of people, and I used to be the same way. I ain't gonna lie. Even my wife mentioned this, that I don't get near as tore up as I used to. I used to be. We got beat on Saturday. I was depressed until about Wednesday the next week before I ever got over it. I don't quite get that way.
Hey, Greg, when we lost under Coach Nealon, they turned all the lights off in the building.
Oh gosh, it's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd go 3 or 4 days before I could ever get over it. And I still want to see us win. I still root hard for us. I just don't let it wreck my life like I used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a lot invested into it. We want to see us be successful, but I think sometimes the emotions get a little carried away, and wanting to fire the coach. And I get it. I understand why people are saying those types of things. I just personally, don't think that's the answer. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, that's why.
You know,
Go ahead, Mike.
go ahead, Frank.
I was
I
going
was
to
just
say
going to say,
don't say that, Mike. Don't
Let
say
me
it.
correct some traffic.
buddy. It's your show.
This is why Mike failed third grade, because he would say something and then
Get a
do
ref-
the opposite. No, go ahead, Mike.
Well, the second year is I failed Spanish, Frank. So both times I failed third grade. Yeah, I wanted to mention something to the fans and people that very few people I'm sure know this. But one of the exercises we did under Coach Nealon was every Friday in the short walkthrough, we would be out in the Mountaineer Field, and he would have us close our eyes and turn circles and imagine at that time 50,000 people screaming, and imagine John Holyfield scoring a touchdown. Imagine a deep pass for a touchdown. And the mind part of the game was what he was stressing. And, believe it or not, it works. It works. When you get off 100 guys on the same wavelength, thinking positively, it works. So I don't know what they're doing. Again, and again, I go by Coach Neal, and that's who I played for. But, when a guy scored a touchdown, he wanted the other 10 guys to meet him in the end zone.
Yeah.
Slap him on the butt, hit him on the head, lift him in the air. We just don't seem to do that. The team enthusiasm is, okay, Garrett Green just went 60 yards. Why should I run 60 yards to tap him on the butt? I'm going to go over and get me some Gatorade. And, that's a big part of the team process. I'm sure Greg will tell you as a longtime coach, you got to buy in, boys. You got to buy in. And I think it may be too late.
Yeah, and the hard thing about that is, and again, not defending Neil Brown, but in his defense, and I know other coaches deal with this, but when you have a different group of people coming in as starters and that sort of thing on your team, it's going to be tough to keep that going. You have a guy that's been there for 3 years, and then all of a sudden here comes this guy with transfer portal. Your playing time drops by half. It's hard to, stay enthusiastic like that. And I think that's one problem. You get these players in here and get built up, all this build up for them. You're an offensive tackle and nobody's saying crap about you. It's hard to be motivated, I think, sometimes with this the new deal the way it is. But other coaches obviously are dealing with it. But it just seems like we just have not meshed. We just, the new guys that have come in, and like I said, I've seen 20 different names in that defensive backfield, just hadn't meshed with what was already there. Our receivers have never, grown. I don't think. So I just think there's some, like you said, the psychology of it. That's what Mike's talking about, the psychology of it. I have a brother who's a clinical psychologist. He can tell you all about this stuff, but there is some psychology there, and the psychology of it seems to be bad right now.
Well, we heard Coach Trickett the other night talk about the importance of fishing and how the players bond by going off and bass fishing, and he said you can't create that, but you can smile and encourage it.
That's right.
And they spend time together. So we don't know what's going on inside the team. But I for one will say I would have never predicted this, based on going 9-4 and that big win over North Carolina in the bowl game, and now here we are. I mean, we came out against Penn State and we were flat in a huge game against Penn State at home. And those games only happen once every 15, 20, 25 years. It was the biggest game since the 98 or 99 Ohio State game. And we came out flat. And so you shake your head. And then we continue to have snaps from center where the quarterback has to jump to get them. And it's this is what the athletic director has to face in terms of what do you do? How do you do it? Because he sees things we don't see,
Yeah.
and it's tough. It's so disappointing because I know so many people just it's their lives are organized around the Mountaineers, and
Yep. That's
ours
right.
are too. But
Yeah.
it's as you said. I think as you age, maybe there's a little more. You say, well, we've been through this before, and so on.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
many people I know are just grieving right now, and they're angry,
Oh
and
yeah.
they don't want it to be this way. And so the
Right.
question is, what can we do? What can they, being the university, do to address this? And yet,
Yeah.
hey, we went through it with basketball last year. I mean, that was an ugly situation. And so
Yeah.
now we're
Terrible.
Humpty Dumpty is being, we're trying to put Humpty Dumpty back on the wall. And so we're
Yeah.
going to face the same thing with basketball. So it's tough.
Yeah. Yep. And you hope that um, again, not being a Neil Brown apologist, but you hope that he's willing to sit down with some people that are maybe not in the middle of the program, outside the program, like Ren Baker, and some folks, and say, we got some problems here that we have to address. How are we going to fix this? Instead of firing him, bringing somebody else in, how are we going to fix this emotional thing? We got to get these players, jacked up to play football. And if you can't come out there on a Saturday night in front of 65,000 people and that place is rocking, if you can't come out hyped up, ready to play a game, ain't no coach in the world can help you.
That's right.
You got to come out there ready to play, and it just seems like that we just don't have that desire. We don't have that fire under our feet, and yeah. So 2 tickets, section 130 for 30 apiece. Feels like he should be put in jail for robbery.
Yeah, I put Nicholas's comment back on there because that let's not minimize the fact that
Yeah,
it's costly. And
that's
and
right.
the tickets for WVU already we've seen this I think multiple years in a row. It's
Yeah.
one of the most expensive game
Yep.
experiences to have
Yep. Yep. Yep.
when you add everything together. And so people want to get their money's worth.
Yeah.
That's no minor matter. Is
No, and if you looked at some of the shots tonight, you could see empty bleachers. Up in the top part of the stadium was empty in places. People were just, you take me for example. If I go to a game, well, my son left today at noon. He went to the game. He left at noon. You have to leave it at. We had bridge day, of course, but you're going to take an entire day, and you got to talk about the price of the ticket, the price of fuel, the price of food. You're going to have to eat a couple of times. If you get concessions, you're talking a lot of money, and your whole weekend is wrapped up into it. And that is a serious thing because um, you know money's what makes the thing roll, and people get when people spend money and they spend their own money, they get frustrated when they don't get anything in return,
that's
and
right.
that's where a lot of people are at right now.
And you as a former basketball coach, Greg, know Tim's got the Charleston score there.
Yep.
We're just going
Yep.
to have to be patient.
That's right.
We got a coach that came from Drake. There, as I know of, there are no West Virginia guys on his staff. They're coming into a new situation in a
Yep.
highly competitive league.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I mean, national level competitive with recent national champions in Kansas and Baylor.
Yep.
We just got to be patient. We just can't
Yeah.
expect them to challenge for the
Right.
Big 12 title in the first year, and people want to win. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
tough.
I watched them. I watched the game with Charleston. I watched it, and they didn't look bad. They look like they got some pieces where they could be pretty good. They're not, like you said, they're not going to win the Big 12. They should be fairly competitive, I think. But again, people got to learn to be patient. And I know, they look at Neil Brown and say, "My gosh, he's had 6 years. What is this? His sixth or seventh, 6 year? How patient can we be?" But again, in my mind, I'm looking at this and thinking, well, if they hire Mike Dunlap to coach next year, how long is it going to take Mike to get everything in order to get the recruits in that he wants to run his style of play. You're talking 3 or 4 years again, and it's just, what's the point? I mean, stick with this guy, give him time, and I think players would even, if the fans would get behind the team instead of in front of them and bash them as they come through, I think recruiting would be better. It would be easier. I know that we've already lost 2 commits here in the last couple of weeks to our football team, and I think a lot of that is related to the hell you hear being raised by fans, and people don't want to come into an atmosphere like that. I mean, everybody wants to win, but at the same time, you got to be supportive. And I said, where I'm in a group chat with my family, and several of them are pretty frustrated. They're alumni of WVU, and the doctor, in fact, said he was out having dinner and wasn't ruining his Saturday night by watching it. And I just text back. I said, I'm sitting here with a bottle of Legion, and I'm watching the game, and I'm rooting for the Mountaineers, and I think that's my team, and I'm hoping we come back. So you got to stay with them, and I know it's hard. I know people get pissed off. I understand that. That's. I mean, this is not the only place in the world where people get pissed and want to fire the coach. I understand that, but at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, what is a coaching change going to do for us at this point? What's going to happen if we change coaches? And if you think about that, I don't think it's going to be an Indiana situation where a new coach comes in, suddenly goes undefeated, and competes for the national championship. Ain't going to happen. And I just think that people just need to be patient. Just hang in there, and everything will work out in the end. It may be a year or two, but we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Well, look at the success Dabo Swinney's had at Clemson.
Yep.
He's had a couple of down years, which means 8 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're talking about running him out of town.
First game of the year this year.
Nonsense.
Yeah, ready to fire him after the first game. Yeah. And now they run all 6 or 7 in a row. Yeah.
Yeah.
It happen like that. Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this before. The fans there, just like at Florida State, are used to competing for national championships.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't happen, they're saying, "Well, that's not right. We've competed for we've won national championships."
Right.
And it's as good as Clemson is. It's still not in the conversation this year for a national championship.
Right.
And the ACC generally is viewed as not as strong. And then you've got Duke that won and is like 6-1, but they brought in a good head coach from Penn State, and he's really brought that team. And then you've got that North Carolina that looked good for a while under Mac Brown, who's won a national championship, and then he's hanging on by his fingernails. So you got the ebb and flow. But the bottom line is, we've all been around the block enough to know all that really matters is what you're concerned about, and West Virginia is what we're concerned about. And I don't know, it's tough. We just gotta we're gonna hang in there because we want to support the team, and yet, as we said tonight, it's not too difficult to identify the areas that need some serious help. And it really, even though people complain about the defense, it starts with the offense. It's the offense. It's the offense. That's what that's what the doctor would come in and see the patient first for.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I saw a comment. I was looking at Facebook there, some WVU sites, and one of them was criticizing the fans for
the idiot picker. So goodbye to this channel. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah. That's it's your call. Talking about the fans booing the players, saying those players want to win, and everybody wants to win. Neil Brown wants to win. We all want to win, but we have to think about, I think, what the solutions are. If you think the solution is firing the coach and bringing somebody else in, that's okay. I mean, that's your opinion, and that's okay to think that. I personally do not think that, but that's my opinion. And again, if you want to leave the channel because of that, I'm sorry, but that's my personal opinion, and everybody can have their own about it. But I just think we need to get behind them, support them, donate some money. If you want to do anything positive for them, give them some money. And there's a lot of different things that go into winning and losing, other than the head coach. I just think, you know, I just think it's deeper than that.
Hmm. And personally,
Oh yeah.
I trust the athletic director. I mean, Ren Baker's a good athletic director. He
Yep.
knows all the factors. His job is on the line. He's
Yep.
CEO of a $110 million budget. He's going to consult with the board and the president, and they'll make a decision. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
reality of it.
Yep. That's right. That's right. And I remember when they hired Neil Brown. All I heard was, "Oh, it's a great hire. What a good hire." I'm thinking. I told my friend, we were discussing it. I said, "How does anybody know if this is a good hire or not?" I said, "You can look at his past record. You can go by that if you want to, but there's no way of knowing if that's a good hire or not." And then the same people are the ones that want to fire him. And
Right.
it's just like Coach DeVries. If he gets off to a bad start and has a rough time in 2 years, they want to fire him. And that's just, to me, just not the answer to solving your problems. I think you got to get to the root of your problems, figure out what they are, and then address those problems. Whether it be an offensive coordinator, whether it be the players you're getting in, your recruiting coordinator, whatever it is, you got to look at the problems that are there and address those problems directly. And I don't know that the total problem is always the head coach.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I would bring up is that it's never a yes or a no. It's always a matter of probabilities.
Yeah.
When you look at Kleeman being at a place like North Dakota State, Kansas State is not all that different from North Dakota State. They're both predominantly ag and tech schools. He went 69-6 at North Dakota State and won 4 national championships. So
Yep.
the big question is, can he take the ride up from the football championship to the football bowl subdivision? And he obviously has done it because they had a stellar record. But that's again where I think context is important, because he
Right.
didn't go
Right.
from North Dakota State to a UCLA
Right.
or
Right.
to a Florida State. He went from a regional university to a regional university, which was a step up.
Yep.
Yeah, and
There's a
so
comment.
yeah, John saying, that's what you can say that, and I can say that. The question is that where Ren Brown is? That's all we're saying. Is that where
Rebecca.
is that where the athletic director is? And he's got to make a call.
Yep. And you're talking about Ren Baker. Yeah, he's got to decide. Is this acceptable, and is this the problem? And I think they have to look at it and say, is this the problem? Is Neil Brown the problem? And I'm just not so sure it is. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But I just think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of different avenues here, and a lot of different parts of this, moving parts, that are the problem. I don't know that it's all him. I think he has a responsibility. I think definitely he can do better. But I think, a lot of that coaching stuff is not necessarily X and O's, but your offensive coordinator, who you hire, and your recruiting coordinator, who you hire, what players do you give scholarships to, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of different moving parts to all this. I don't know that it's all the head coach. It may be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we bring in Mike Dunlap next year and he wins 11 games. Who knows? But personally, I don't think that's going to happen. And no offense, Mike, but I don't think it matters. If you don't have a good,
Understood, Greg.
yeah, if you're not bringing in the right players, as a recruiter, as an offensive coordinator, if you're not calling the right plays, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that go into it other than that. Now, if they fire Neil Brown, I'm still a fan. I'm going to root for whoever they bring in and hope they do better, But again, I don't know that that's the answer.
Yeah, I think Timothy, we've seen this in other places.
Yeah.
Where you say, yeah, the issue really is this platoon is not playing well, so you bring a new OC in or a DC in. I mean, that's what happened at Penn State. They weren't happy with the offensive coordinator, and they brought in the fellow from KU as an offensive coordinator, and it's worked great so far. But yeah, I mean, it's what's interesting is, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but we understand these are all opinions. But remember last year with two public embarrassments
Yep.
with Coach Huggins. There were a lot of people who said this guy needs to be fired immediately, and there were a hell of a lot of people on this who would be on this channel saying you got to give him another chance.
Yeah.
And in the end, the decision had to be made by the president and the athletic director about what to do. But there were people who said, "Look, this guy's a Hall of Fame coach. You got to keep him." And yet the record was not what it had been in the previously. No recruiting of high schools. It was all portal. But again, it was a matter of, okay, take it all into consideration. And you know as well as I, there are a number of shows just like this that are basically saying, get rid of Brown, he's no good, we're tired, blah. And that's fine. We're just trying to put it in a different perspective because it's a complex matter. That's all.
Yeah. Yep. And Frank, I know a lot of people would never admit to this, but same way with Don Nealon and the same way with Coach Huggins. If you sat in the stands or you read social media, the comments about those two coaches were horrible. We need to fire these guys, get rid of them. It's passed him by. That's what they used to say about Huggins. Time's passed him by. Game's passed him by. We need to get rid of them, get somebody in here younger, blah, 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 et cetera. So everybody's all up in arms wanting to get rid of these guys. And then when they go, they're iconic all of a sudden, Right. And before you wanted to kill them on social media and get rid of them and fire them. Now they're icons. I remember the night Coach Nealon announced that he was retiring. I was at the game, and we were out in the parking lot after the game. I believe we played Syracuse that night. And we're out in the parking lot after the game, had the radio on, listen to the post game. Tony Creedy comes on and announces the news that Coach Nealon has decided to retire, and after the bowl game, and the parking lot went crazy. I mean, people were cheering all over the place. They would never admit to that now, but they were.
Wow.
And I was there and I heard it. I know they were. And people immediately started chanting Rich Rodriguez's name. We want Rodriguez, blah, blah, blah. So, when people jump on this and start with all that, that's fine. If that's your opinion, you think we should get rid of a coach, but it doesn't mean that you quit supporting the team and, supporting the program because, it's what we got. It's what we are. And, again, I don't know if that's the answer or not. If that's what they decide to do, that's what they decide to do. I'll be supportive no matter what. But at the same time, my personal opinion is we just need to figure out what the real problems are and go at those.
We just can't continue the way we are now. This is
right, exactly. Something's got to change. Yeah, something's got to change. Yep.
Well, guys, we've been on for an hour and 25 minutes. Mike, final comments from you, and then we'll turn to Greg. We'll do a quick redo of the Joey situation, and I'll show those links again, and then Greg we'll talk about our guest on Wednesday night. And Mike, you first.
Well, first of all, I thought this was a great show. We certainly talked about a lot of things. The recap of the game was, in my opinion, which is what we're here for, was spot on. As far as the things that happened, the effort, the maybe not the lack of effort, but the not the plus effort. As Greg will know, one of the things when I was a high school basketball player, I loved to see a ball on the floor. I loved it because it was going to be mine. And you just don't get a sense of that with these players. Neil Brown brought him in. Where's the urgency? Where is that urgency in a season that, like you said, Frank, was there for the taking? And they've got to make up their mind. I look for them to have a players-only meeting this week. And I just off the top of my head. And if there's any grievances, iron them out. Get back and put your, as my old coach used to say, be hard nosed, stick your nose in there, and get it done. I noticed on defense some guys that really, quite honestly, didn't want to make a tackle. Uh, they were there. They would have got their grade on the film, but they didn't want to put their shoulder in anybody. And that's not Mountaineer football. The coaching change, I couldn't agree more about what Greg said. You're starting over. Do we really want that? Neil Brown is not is a football coach, is a good football coach, but where's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that being said, I want to say sorry to Joey and thank him for being part of bringing me on this program. And I hope everything works well. If anybody knows about health problems, I do. And we need all the support to get behind Joey and help him get through this. And I appreciate you guys allowing me to be on here with you.
You're a great guy, Mike, and a good friend.
Yep.
And that's and here I think JD Pesto has a lot of good ideas here. Asking too much from one guy, calling plays that sometimes are mystifying, and a new OC. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yep, and Mike, along with what you said, we're thinking about Joey. We hope everybody will remember him and reach out, and try to help out the situation a little bit. As Frank said earlier, and he put up the link. He's going to put it up again. That's his link right there. It's his goodbye video that he put out today, announcing that due to health problems, he was going to be dropping the show that he does. There's a link for his GoFundMe if you can. Whatever you can give, jump in there and give something to help him out with the medical expenses, because they are coming, and they're not light. So we hope you'll reach out and help and donate to that cause. And we do appreciate everybody tuning in. We know you may not always agree with our opinions, but that's what the show's about. We want to hear your opinions, and we're not going to dispute your opinions. We'll just give you our opinions. And if it appears that way, then that's fine. You don't have to quit watching us just because you disagree with us. And there's our show for next Wednesday, the WVU Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. We're going to have Ron Brown, former defensive tackle, and now an astute businessman. He's going to be on air with us on Wednesday night. And we'll also look back at this game, talk a little bit about that, and then talk about the next game coming up. So we hope you'll join us for that on Wednesday. And Frank, a good show tonight. I think this helps all of us. It does me to vent a little bit and talk a little bit about it. I feel a lot better now than what I did when the game first ended. So this is a good place to vent and get your frustrations out. So I enjoy it for that reason, and I like to talk about this kind of stuff. And I think that we had a good show tonight, and we appreciate everybody for tuning in. All the comments, we appreciate those. And again, just because you disagree with us don't mean you don't have to watch us. Just keep watching. We try to make it light. We try to be positive. We try to have a good time and bring you good guests and that sort of thing. So we hope you appreciate that. Don't blame don't bring the coaches for the bad performance out here on the air, right, Frank?
Yeah, it hurts though, and we want to, as we said a couple weeks ago, we wanted to get on the post-game show with smiles, and we did that after Oklahoma State, but we haven't been able to do it the last 2 weeks. So hopefully that'll change out in the desert. The time of the show is the time of the game has not yet been set. I just looked, and so who knows when we'll be on the post-game, but always good working with you, Greg. Thanks so much.
Yep, enjoyed it very much. And again, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. We hope you'll join us Wednesday night as we bring you Ron Brown on the Mountaineer Locker Room. Then and now, here's one more comment here before we get off. Micromanagement is an issue with Neil Brown. You hired the assistant staff, let them do their job. The quality OC and DC will not want to come to WVU under those constraints. And I agree. If you got an offensive coordinator, you got to let him coordinate and call the plays. I mean, it's that simple. And I think that those are things that will have to be taken a look at. I agree. And again, like we said, there's got to be some discussion about what is the real problem and what do we need to do about it. And so something has to change. And I think hopefully that'll go. I hope that'll get taken care of. we'll be Arizona next week. Let's go Mountaineers. I hear you, Timothy. I'm all with you. I'll be watching and I'll be rooting on the Mountaineers, and I hope everybody else will too. Frank, it's been a great evening. Enjoyed talking with you. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you on Wednesday night on the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. Good night, everybody.